Girivara Vindhya Shiradini Vashini Vishnu Vilashini Jeshnu Nute Bhagavati He Shiti Kantakatu. Om Nicho Nichanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kamam Tamatmastam Yenu Pashanti Diraha Tesham Shanti Shashvati Netaresham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That one, the eternal among non-eternal things, the intelligence of the most intelligent ones, who, though ever one, nevertheless fulfills the desires of the devotees. That one, the wise ones realize, is dwelling in their own self. To them belong peace and to none else. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidveshovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Yes, there. And you see Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Savikalpa Samadhi is the Vedantic way of talking about consciousness in time and outside of time, you might say. Kalpa means, Kalpanika means imaginations in time. So when you enter into the river of time, then with this mind complex, you're projecting various things and playing with forms and names and so forth. And it's like you do in the dream state tonight, which is why Ramana Maharshi said, this is dream number 1 and then dream number 2, you see. So he says both the waking and the dreaming states are dreamlike, all having to do with sankalpa, or mental projection. And Yoga's way of saying that is Asamprajnata and Samprajnata. So looking more at the strange phenomena of people entering into cycles of transmigration against their will, pulled along by karma and suffering as a result, so that Lord Buddha has to come and give you the Four Noble Truths, starting with there is suffering and there's a cause and then there's a way out. That happens again and again every 500 to 800 or so years, where a great soul like that comes and helps you remind those souls that are being drugged from birth to death and death to birth, as Vivekananda puts it in his poem. And so wants you to know that there is a way of transcending form, but there's also a way of living a divine life in form. Those are your two options, really. The other option, suffering with form, is not really an option for the conscious person. The only way, this is a quote from Vivekananda, the only way to prove to yourself that you're not matter is by leaving matter alone. So that's what's happening when you're having kaivalya, you're divorcing yourself from your long-time romance with nature, with form. Nature produces forms, with the aid of the mind, of course. Because nature is the insentient material principle and mind is the sentient consciousness principle. Those two, bring them together and all sorts of mischief can happen. Forms by the millions arise over millions and millions of years. Might as well say millions of cycles, because when Maya kicks in, there's no beginning, middle, and end there either. Or you could say, as Shankar said, the only end to Maya would be when you reached Asamprajnata Samadhi, what he called moksha or mukti. So we're really looking at words in different periods of India's history coined or used or utilized by different saints and seers and saints in India to really relate the same thing according to the condition of people in any given age or time. So when we talk about Savikalpa Samadhi, or in this case Asamprajnata Samadhi, seated samadhis, and we're talking about a way of reaping the karmas of your spiritual practice, to live a dharmic and divine life. You begin to transcend suffering, which is actually one of the things that's going to happen in this process of Nirodha. Now, in order to introduce the 10 points that are here about Asamprajnata Samadhi, which is actually a lot to say, you don't find that much to say from anyone else but Patanjali on seedless samadhi or on nirvikalpa. There's just nothing to say. All the great seers just sort of shut up. Their lips stop moving and their eyes get big and they smile, you see, or something. Or they, like Ramakrishna, you hear about nirvikalpa or something and he just goes into it. Or if you ask him to explain what it's like, he goes into it, just thinking about it. That's how the mind is so open to suggestion when it's pure. Like a child's mind is open to suggestion when it's pure, you might have noticed. So, but a seer is not childish, it's childlike. So it has this ability just to, maybe even more of an ability, because that suggests some sort of effort, but just the tendency, the natural tendency to lean towards bliss and samadhi, which is really owned at the level of Sananda and Sasmita, isn't it? I mean, that's where your bliss is coming from, this light of all-attracting love and bliss that they talk about. That's God with form, the highest form. Where rolls the stream of knowledge, bliss, and the truth that follows both. It just occurred to me, so I thought I'd use it. Knowledge, bliss, and the truth that follows both. That's one of Swami Vivekananda's verses to his Song of the Sannyasa. Wake up the note that had its birth far off, where worldly taint could never reach. In mountain caves and glades of forest deep, whose calm no sigh for lust or wealth or fame could ever dare to break, where rolled the stream of knowledge, truth, and the bliss that follows both, sing high that note, sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. Om Tat Sat Om is the non-dual statement. See? That's the Asamprajnata. So the whole thing is a very nicely well-led process of the soul back to its inception. But guess what? An inception that never happened. It's beyond inception. It's beyond conception. So when you talk about Asamprajnata Samadhi and those souls that abide there, and then you're talking about souls that are keeping a blissful ego on purpose so that they can transmit knowledge to others. You take it in the opposite direction of which the aspirant is headed. In Samadhi, they're coming back down the ladder. They're coming back out the sixth chakra, and you're trying to get back into it. See, back to your source. They've already been there, and they're coming and going all the time. Aurobindo called it going up and down the amber stairs of birth and death, because you might as well be being born and dying every time you go to sleep, every time you breathe. Isn't the in-breath life, the held breath or birth, and the held breath is life, and the out-breath is death, you see. So you're just echoing the sentiments of birth, life, and death with everything you do. Vivekananda said, the minute you're born, you're rushing towards death. All of us are. He just only took 39 years to do it, and Shankara 32. But in the meantime, they lived in Savikalpa Samadhi, that is, in this seated Samadhi, Asamprajnata, because that's where you can hold the most bearable kind of ego. Because ego to them, who have been to non-dual form of Samadhi, is to be done away with. Why even take it back? See? So they're taking it on for your sake, taking on a body for your sake, and that's a kind of a body you're talking about, a wisdom body. And that's why you meditate on it with the methods and so forth, to make sure that you know that you have one. Otherwise, you don't know that you have one. You may know that you have an intellect somewhere, but it's thinking, with the ego's help, I own that knowledge. See? But that's not the case with this knowledge that's mixed with bliss. They're not thinking, I own that. They're thinking, she owns it, and I'll prove it to you. I'll send Babaji Bob Kindler to you. You see, and he'll make a chart and show you. Be on hand. Year 2013 ends. You'll find out about Shakta, Advaita, Vada, which is an ancient path in India. So we're not teaching anything new. There's no new and old in the Atman. Right? No birth, death. So why should there be new and old? Can't talk about this as ancient wisdom. You might say perennial wisdom, or you'd have to say eternal wisdom. So, when you talk about Asamprajnata Samadhi, you're talking about beings living a dharmic or a divine life. When you talk about Asamprajnata Samadhi, you have to introduce it by talking about the states of mind. Nirodha is the fifth state of mind. First is Shakta, scattered. That mind is no good for anything, you might have noticed. That is, if it's ever attacked you, for any given time, you were probably pretty useless when it did. And when you see other people who have made a habit of scattered mind, then you just, the point comes home, you see. So that's the first state of mind. Second state of mind is muddha, dull. This is Patanjali's own teaching of the 5 states of mind, leading to Nirodha. So it's this process of Nirodha leading to Asamprajnata. You're going to have to get to Nirodha mind in order to get to Asamprajnata. So this is how it happens by words and teachings, according to the father of yoga, affectionately given that name. Although yoga was in existence long before him. Gita, Krishna was teaching all the yogas way, way back. So second state of mind is muddha, dull. Like Shakta mind is like this sine wave. Dull mind, muddha mind's like this. Long valley. Then the third state of mind is vikshipta. That is, sometimes high, sometimes low, sometimes peak, sometimes valley, you see. And so it's like a fly, as Sri Ramakrishna said. That kind of mind is not good for yoga because sometimes it's like a fly resting on sweets, like that nice white organic pineapple we had at the break that the live streaming audience couldn't taste, sorry. And sometimes lighting on filth, like a sore or worse. So that kind of mind is not good for yoga either. It can't make up its mind. It's not determinate. It's always indeterminate, so it could spoil yoga at any moment, yoga being a flat line. And that is the fourth state of mind. Ekagra is a flat line. You've died. Your mind has died. And you hear about that in spiritual circles, go kill the Buddha, or may your mind expire, may you die on your pillow, the Zen Buddhists and so forth. You're talking about a mind that has just expired completely to thought. Thought being the father of the deed. You see, all deeds started here. So that's called ekagra. And that fourth state of mind is leading to Nirodha. So ekagra is going to be a flat line. Now, Nirodha is a line that drops out. It's a line and then a space, line and then a space, line and then a space. So you're coming in and out of knowledge of, say, the last thing you remember, ego, sweet ego. It's a station for you now. It's a satellite station where you can consciously drop in on. But now you know, and Patanjali explains it so well, what's going on in the mind of a Ramakrishna or in the consciousness of a Ramakrishna when people are always asking him in the 1800s, what was it like to go into nirvikalpa, Asamprajnata? What was it like? And then he'd try to explain it and fall into it. Finally, one day he managed to get this much out. It's like a salt doll walking into an ocean to measure its depths. So here you're sort of let's call it a sugar doll to fit the analogy, you see. And you're going to walk into a big vat of honey, you see. So you're coming back to this sense of ego that's very refined and very peaceful, very blissful. It's really got everything it needs there in form. But that's the rub. It's got all it needs. It's got all it needs, you see. And it's enjoyed it as much as it wants to, you see. It's a mart of joy, Sri Ramakrishna said. This world is a mart of joy. Here I can eat, drink, and be merry. But put Ramakrishna side by side with a hedonistic person who is eating and drinking and making merry, and see, one never goes into deep valleys, you see, or has vikshipta mind. Always has ekagra mind at least, and then sometimes flatline, no mind, space, you see. While this other mind, this poor fool, is enjoying and glutting himself, and then he's going into all sorts of pain and suffering and cycles. So when Ramakrishna says, here I can eat, drink, and be merry, you must think that his Sasmita Samadhi, his Asamprajnata Samadhi, is available to him at all times when he comes out of a Asamprajnata Samadhi. Now that alone is a very shocking fact. There's not many people can ever come out of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. You go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it's like a moth just saw a bonfire. See? That's all she wrote. See, form is erased from your mind. You're going to your essence. The hailstone had a little trepidation, but then it fell into its own essence and merged. It's all merged. And that's the state of moksha that's ever at hand. Do we have to go back to show the chart? That's mukti, that's moksha. They're just returning to it after a self-actuated vacation from it, you see. A sojourn away from it. A sort of taking on of a dream of collective humanity in form. And then they can go back into a Asamprajnata Samadhi. So anyway, by this kind of process, you can sort of understand in the Gospel of Ramakrishna that almost palpable thing you can taste, touch, see, hear, and smell with your subtle senses when you hear descriptions of Ramakrishna going into these different samadhis, which the priests and pundits of India didn't have names for, half of them. They'd come and say, oh, you've had this samadhi, if you had sthiti samadhi, if you had, Unmana Samadhi, have you had Jata Samadhi? And he said, yes, but I've also had this Samadhi, this Samadhi. Wait a minute, that's not in my books. See, you fluster them. What'd you call that again? So, when you're having those kinds of experiences of all different kinds, then, of course, they're all going to dovetail into this state of formless reality called Asamprajnata. Non-dualism, Advaita, Shakta, Advaita, Vada. That's why these two pillars with their three sets of two are very important. Nirguna, Saguna, Nirvikalpi, Savikalpi, Asamprajnata, Samprajnata. You're talking about the same thing at three different periods of time in India, the way they explained it. So again, fourth state of mind, ekagra, flatline, but then Nirodha happens, see, sometimes called Nirodha. Then all of a sudden it gets line in a space, line in a space, line in a space, and maybe pretty soon just all space. No tone anymore. The tone has disappeared back into the great bell of Asamprajnata Samadhi. So, think about that, how a person will go through 5 states of mind on their way to realization. And then let's take these 10, look at these 10, as a process leading from seated samadhi to seedless samadhi. First, mind with gunas and nature present expands toward freedom. So, gunas, remember, rajas, tamas, sattva. Avarana, vikshepa, prakasha. I'll bring a chart about that next week. The covering power, the distorting power, and the revelatory power. Those are the 3 gunas. And so those are now still present in mind. And also nature is still present in mind. What kind of nature? Unmanifested prakriti right there. Unmanifested prakriti. We have a nice chart on that about the iceberg, remember? The tip of the iceberg is manifested Prakriti. Everything that's underneath the surface is unmanifested Prakriti. They're all connected, you see. The form that you see here is just the tip of the iceberg compared to what's potential in nature. And nature can't do anything without consciousness to help it. It's just insentient. So that unmanifested Prakriti, thought of form and gunas are still there in that first state, the leaning towards seedlessness. The second point here, with rajas eliminated, intellect discriminates between matter and self. This is mixing in the Kaivalya principle now. Rajas means restlessness goes away. And any kind of frenetic activity of the mind, it's settling into a peace that passes all understanding. Somebody said to me at Thanksgiving dinner the other night, well, I'm leaving and I only have this to say, that God loves silence first and foremost. And I said, yes, that's true, but where do you find God nowadays? If he didn't want people to talk, he wouldn't have given us tongues. We've been talking for 2 hours about philosophy, you see. What else are we supposed to talk about when we talk? We use our tongue for. We can't speak about God. Holy Mother used to say, is God something that you can talk about like you would barter fish and greens in the marketplace? You can't talk about God. You only talk around it or at it. So that's what you have your tongue for. Why remain silent? Give out the teachings, share them with others. But you can give up this mindless talking of zeros that you engage in, social talk. It doesn't get you anywhere. And in fact, people go away and say, that was a fool I was just speaking to. But here they only go away and say, that was a madman I was talking to. There's something strange and wonderful about that madman. And that's how they felt about Ramakrishna and Ramana Maharshi and others they went to. So rajas is eliminated. You get rid of that frenetic activity, even in its inception, and intellect begins to discriminate between matter and self. It's discriminated already between that, way back into the early limbs of yoga, but this kind of discrimination at the level of formlessness means I'm ready to give it up. That kind of discrimination back in the early stages was taking it on as a possibility. Can I give that up? Can I leave my body? Do I have fear? Do I have doubt? Does God really exist? Is matter really real or unreal? That's all early stuff, you see. But at this level of Asamprajnata Samadhi, you're courting not only just the possibility of giving it up, you're looking straight in the face of form, of the void of form. It's formlessness, and you're going to walk into it. Sort of like jumping off a steep cliff. It's against all your usual instincts, right? You can't even get up close to the edge of the cliff. The wind's blowing, you see. My dad got up to the edge of Grand Canyon before I was even born. My mother tells the story, and he was looking over and this wind caught him in the back. Almost pushed him over. So it's that kind of feeling. You're teetering on the brink of formless, but there's something very, very attracting to it, and you feel like that salt doll that wants to jump in, because maybe you can come out again and tell everyone what it was like. See? Mm-hmm. Of course, the salt doll melts into its own essence, and there's no one left to come out. That's the end of individual bliss. You see, but that's okay, because it doesn't interest you that much anymore. You've had it enough, and it's only just convenient to come back to it when you want to help humanity. Ramakrishna was just all bliss. Christ was all love. Buddha was all compassion. What do you think when you look at Ramakrishna? That's a bliss there. He's demonstrating to you bliss. Our founder used to say that all the time. He'd pray to all the great beings. He'd say, "Oh Lord Buddha, you are my compassion. Oh Lord Christ, you are my love." And he'd go through all the avatars. Oh Muhammad, you are my peace. Peace be upon him. And then he'd get to Ramakrishna, his own teacher. And, "Well, Ramakrishna, what can I say about you? You're my bliss. You see, you're just my Ananda." So, That's Ramakrishna. So Rajas is eliminated and intellect begins to discriminate between mind, matter, and self at a very advanced stage, okay? Consciousness and unconsciousness. Matter and mind. Mind at a very refined state. The third bullet point there, the early stages of Asamprajnata Samadhi are encountered and attained. So you can see why I gave you the 5 states of mind, because, and Kaivalya last week, because all of this is kind of a difficult mixture to cite. He's done an admirable job of trying to put this in some sort of an order for us. But now you're seeing how a lot of this, some of it happens before others. It can't just be laid out on a graph like this and explained it like that. Like anything else, we would like to see it straightforward. No, it's not going to happen, you see. It's too complex. Besides, you've got the human temperament to figure into it. Some of them will get these early and some will get these later and so forth. So there'll be different admixtures of this according to different temperaments. Studious, contemplative, active, and devotional. 4 different kinds of temperaments. So Asamprajnata Samadhi gets encountered and attained. The final level of Asamprajnata Samadhi brings about Dharma Mega Samadhi. If you'll remember back with your photographic memory, please, to last week's chart, where I showed you that on Kaivalya, you'll see that that was about the 4th or 5th level of that stages of attainment of Kaivalya was Dharma Mega Samadhi. And after that, Mala Vinasha. You get rid of your imperfections, very subtle imperfections in your mind after you've had Dharma Mega Samadhi. Dharma Mega Samadhi means a rain cloud of virtues. Here's where you understand that all virtues exist inside of you, just like all knowledge lies inside of you, just like the Atman lies inside of you, just like the mother is inside of you. When you get the Dharma Mega Samadhi, it all comes raining down on you. And before it was a rain of, and now it's a rain of bliss. They hit the fan before, but now it's a cooling, welcome breeze, like a fan dipped in sandalwood, a sandalwood fan dipped in cool water and waved at you on a hot day, you see. Ramakrishna said. That's how beautiful and welcome that is, you see. Well, here is where Patanjali brings in one of his few mentions of Mother. He calls her Chit Shakti. Chit Shakti illumines the buddhi, which becomes stable and desireless. It's as if Mother stayed out of the whole picture, as she usually does, until a very advanced stage. And then Chit Shakti, the energy of wisdom, of higher thought, comes forward. She is the energy of wisdom. If you haven't realized that by now, I don't know what else I can say to convince you, you see. She's the mother of wisdom, the mother of the worlds, the divine mother of the universe, the primordial goddess. I can go on with English names, but I can give you 100 or 1,000 Sanskrit names for her, if you want. Somebody hand me the Sahasranam over there. So, Chit Shakti illumines the buddhi. It means with rajas, that is restlessness, eliminated, and the intellect in a fine state of discrimination, and Asamprajnata Samadhi all had encountered and attained, then she comes and illumines the field, the mind field. And Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha happens. The cessation of the mind's waves, and then Asamprajnata Samadhi starts to dawn. Getting exciting, isn't it, here? Let's go on. The triple gunas of Prakriti get duly dissolved back into their origin. Now, I've given the teaching several times that the gunas are there at the beginning of inception of all form. They are in equilibrium, and when it's time for a cycle of creation to come forth, they're kicked into disequilibrium, and according to the philosophy and others, Samkhya and so forth, that's the beginning of the whole shooting match. That's where the whole dream begins. So the gunas then are at the very inception of a cycle, so they're going to wait to the very end to go away. They're going to be at the end of the elimination of all cycles of thought. Remember, talking about things like buddhi, intelligence, chit shakti. You're talking about mind at a very refined level. Very refined level. A pure mind. Chit shuddhi. Chit shakti, chit shuddhi. Might as well be the same thing. Now, these gunas begin to get dissolved. And the mind is, it's another way of saying, Koivalya, I think I'm going to give up nature, so, I really can't give up nature, can I, till I give up the gunas. Because form really started with them. You see, and nature just kind of came along and accommodated them. See. So gunas have to go, those modes of nature that are in nature. And then the dissolution of sattva guna, that's the highest of the gunas, means balance. When balance gets dissolved even, or the desire for balance, it brings about Asamprajnata Samadhi. So you can see then why he explains the end of bliss, where rolls the stream of knowledge, truth, and the bliss that follows both. Knowledge, then you find this bliss kicking in, but then you find it giving out. And then truth dawns in the mind, truth in the form of Asamprajnata Samadhi. Purusha now controls the mind's activities and is free from samsara. So the soul is in charge now. Purusha, the indweller in the city of 9 gates, Purusha, you see, is now in control of the whole shoot and match. And attachment to matter ceases, but the intellect still conducts relations with matter and spirit. So now everything has been given over to the soul, and it will retain form if it so desires. That's Jivan Mukta. Or it will give up form if it so desires. That's Videha Mukti. It will give up all bodies and get into formless freedom, Videha Mukti. Or it will retain the form and come back into it to help others. Bodhisattva kind of idea in Buddhism, what we call Jivan Mukta or Jivan Mukti. Finally, the yogi interacts with the world, but the chit shakti within abides calmly despite all appearances. So, again, you really have no other better example than Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa when Mother Kali got a hold of him. Because he was gone. There was hardly a semblance of Ramakrishna left. It was all Kali in him. It was all he said. The last thing he said when he passed from the body was Kali 3 times. So basically everything was Kali to him. See, everything had become the Chit Shakti. She took over and he was gone. And that's because she favored him so highly, and that's because he had the right idea. To stride boldly into formlessness without any fear and doubt, and to give up all traces of ego, and to have the ultimate experience in spiritual life, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or seedless Samadhi. Keshav Chandra Sen was the famous figure in Bengal at the time. Ramakrishna was not known very much. But Keshav Chandra Sen always went to Ramakrishna, see, because he loved Ramakrishna and wanted to hear him speak. So once Keshav said to Thakur, means the Lord, Sri Ramakrishna, he said to him, I want to go into the deepest samadhi, form of samadhi, dive into the ocean of samadhi, swim to the other shore, and never come back again. And Ramakrishna said, don't say that. Yes, Keshav, dive in, have form of samadhi, but come back and help others. Swim to the other shore, see what's there, but always come back and help others. Ramakrishna used to say, there are 2 kinds of Paramahamsas. One hides behind a screen and eats mangoes. The other brings the mangoes out and wants to share them with you. And both of these Paramahamsas are very high beings, no doubt. But they're just of different temperaments, different natures, for different reasons. Takes all kinds, right? So spiritual life's no different. Ramakrishna was the kind that liked to share with others. So he was here to, as almost the public avatar. See? I'm here for everyone. Think of me what you will, say of me what you will. So Vivekananda later said, you can think of Ramakrishna anyway. You can think of him as just a spiritual man, a divine being, a sage, a seer. You can think of him as an avatar, divine incarnation of Kali, but just think of him. Just think of him. I've been doing it for over 40 years now. You talk about alambanas and things to meditate on. Ramakrishna has been my alambana for 40 years, along with his divine consort, Holy Mother. So, and their mantra has been in my mind, you see, as given to me by my guru, who was her last living monastic disciple. So this line of teachings comes through that line of realized souls. Yoga is a part of it. And next week we will be getting into Ashtaka and Nashtaka. I'll show you the systems in India, Vedanta being one of them, Yoga being another, and how they are to be not compared, but to be integrated, that each one opened the way for the next in a line of succession in history, from the very earliest to the most recent. Now let's read the final quote here. When the mind field expands to know the underlying principles which support it, that is called vitarka. Okay. Savitarka and savitarka and nirvitarka. So now he's defining this. Who's defining this? The father of Vedanta. Beautiful thing about father of Vedanta, Vedavyas, came along at the later century and took the yoga system and made comments on it. A beautiful way the Vedavyas commented on Patanjali's yoga. Also a beautiful way Shankara commentated on Patanjali's yoga. So everyone was very fascinated with that eight-limbed system, and of the more recent being, from 700 AD onwards, or 140 AD, which is supposed to be when Patanjali lived, onwards, and that yoga system was very much flavored with Buddhism. Patanjali must have loved Buddhism very much. Buddha lived 550 BC, and Patanjali around 180, they say. So you could see the whole thing just connected like that. Not at all antagonistic of each other, always complementary of each other, and adding on constantly according to the time and the needs, right down to the present time. So that's what means here by to know the underlying principles which support it. That's called vitarka. Underlying principles are air, earth, fire, water, ether, tasting, hearing, touching, smelling, seeing. Those are the underlying principles of consciousness. They come from consciousness. The power of your eyes to see comes from the consciousness of your mind, not from nature. Nature can produce fleshy orbs. It can't produce consciousness. Get it? Consciousness is its own. It is conscious. It is sentient. It is sentiency with a capital S. Not subject to birth and death. What's happening in nature? Oh, birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. What's happening in Atman? Absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. Nothing that has anything to do with pleasure and pain. Nothing that has anything to do with good and bad. Nothing that has anything to do with life and death. Nothing that has anything to do with the pairs of opposites. It's non-dual. Read my lists. Their lists, really, but I'm helping them compile them here. Now, I didn't get more than a sentence out, did I? Sorry, Vedavyas. Let's try this again. When the mind field expands to know the underlying principles which support it, that is called vitarka, air, earth, fire, water, and ether, and so forth. When it seeks a more refined expansion in order to comprehend the subtle supports behind appearances, that is known as vichara. Well, what are the more refined things? See, now you're talking about the avisheshas. You're talking about subtle elements, tanmatras, things like that. See. When bliss is experienced upon knowing the gross and the subtle, that is called ananda, sattvic joy. So now you've actually known the gross, known the subtle, because you have bodies, that is the external and the internal, world and mind, matter and mind you might say, You've known those two now, but now you're going towards a state that's called not gross, not subtle, but causal. Karana. Karana means causal. Sukshma means subtle. And so you're going from the gross to the subtle to the causal, and now you're meditating on such things as the ego. Because that actually caused your embodiment, in a sense. In other words, when you decided to become a separate self, that's when you took an ego. Otherwise, you would have just stayed one with Brahman. Some light sucked you out of the ocean and turned you into a drop of rain. See, sucked you up into the sky of awareness, and you became a crystallized being. You see, and your ego was necessary for that. You did that. No one did that to you, God nor devil. You did that. You can undo it too, in the most wonderful of ways. Now he's given us those three. When the mind expands to know the underlying principles, when it expands to know the subtle supports, now when it expands to know bliss, and finally, when evidence of a unified self occurs, which allows the removal of all distinctions, that is known as Ashmita. You begin to contemplate the loss of your ego, the disappearance of your assumed self. And you read in the Gospel of Ramakrishna him doing that all the time. He would come back out of the Samadhi, and he would look at the people sitting there, including Naren, his favorite young man, student. He'd say, "What was your name again?" Totally lost to the ego, inside of himself and outside, you see. So coming out, he had to get back into this sense of separate self, remember souls and names and forms and so forth. Sometimes he would say, "Bring me a glass of water." And he'd come out of Samadhi and say, "Oh, Mother, what are all these people doing here? Who are they? Why are they looking at me?" And then some sort of semblance of the situation would dawn. He said, "Bring me a glass of water." And he'd go, "Oh yes, I'm in the realm of the 5 elements." So he would, because he had meditated on air, earth, fire, water, and ether, he didn't just take them for granted, like all of humanity does. Oh, here we are sporting, having fun with our egos amongst the 5 elements. There's no meaning to it, there's no purpose to it, there's no origin to it, there's an end to it when I die. Let's have fun while we can, you see. No. He knew the constituents, the makeup of the universe, what to speak of the subtle universe, what to speak of the causal universe, what to speak of Asamprajnata Samadhi, beyond all name and form. He had been into it, immersed himself in it. He used to say that, dip your mind like a towel into the ocean of Satchidananda until it becomes saturated and drenched and completely malleable and under your control. So this is what happens. This is how the father of yoga is describing a Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa before Ramakrishna even showed up. See, because Ramakrishna had happened before. Why do you think he was named Rama and Krishna? The same being. Naren asked him on his deathbed, although a Paramahamsa never dies, he actually thought in his mind, if this man thinks right now, if he tells me that he's an avatar, then I will believe him. And the thought was picked right out of his mind, and Ramakrishna turned his head and said, he who is Rama and he who is Krishna is now here in this body as Ramakrishna. And not just in your Vedantic sense, that is, not just philosophically. This is the actual return, as it were, as if it ever left, of this divine consciousness which is in all of us, the Paramatman. Let's celebrate that. See, there's the reason for your joy, if anything. Your bliss is to celebrate that. What are you celebrating? Good food at Thanksgiving? A couple kegs of beer brought by some fraternity frats or something? College frats? Are those things to celebrate? Or is the bliss of your divine nature something to stand up, acknowledge, and celebrate? See? That you're eternal. So when evidence of a unified ego occurs, that's the removal of all distinctions. That's known as Ashmita. So that is the gateway, or Sashmita. You'd say it either way. Ashmita just means sense of ego. So with ego, Sashmita. When that disappears, then this whole process is underway, and one, as Vedavyas says here, makes acquaintance with one's true self, maybe for the first time in that lifetime. Of course, makes acquaintance with that self in that lifetime is very, very unlikely you're going to forget it in the next lifetime. You've pretty much gone beyond the gunas, gone beyond nature, seen your true nature. If you ever come back again, you'll come back as a living, liberated soul. What's that called?
Jivan.
He beat you all. I knew he would. Jivan Mukta. Jivan Mukti is the actual thing itself. Jivan Mukta is the being. So the Jivan Mukta has Jivan Mukti. All right, so we have looked at Sasamprajnata and Asamprajnata, and remember, I'm mating them up with Vedanta's versions, Nirvikalpa, Savikalpa, because Vikalpa, again, means imaginings in time, Nir means extinct. So all your imaginings in time have been made extinct. You don't go there anymore to form. You're in an unexplainable state of pure conscious awareness, a homogeneous mass of pure conscious awareness. And there's no second thing to explain it. See, there never has been. The salt doll never came out from the ocean and said, "Oh, guess I plumbed its depths. I know how deep it is." No, nobody ever did that. You see, it can't be done. And if you're in a state of savikalpa, then you're with vikalpas. You're still having sankalpas and vikalpas going on. You know what those words mean, right? So you're still engaging in thought processes called projections, vikalpas. Vikalpas are with desire, sankalpas are of all sorts of design. You can get together with a bunch of other mind souls and create a world called ancestors, or create a world called earth, or heaven, or even hell. The 7 lower lands are called patalas, or sunken grounds. Those are hell beings, hell realms. They're all in the mind too. You won't find them located geographically somewhere. Have you found heaven up there? So these are in the minds of human beings, just like everything else is in the mind. In the remaining time, which is about 20 minutes, let's look then towards this new chart. We will broach it, at least, this time. But we probably won't be able to come anywhere near finishing it, but this will give you a good taste of next week's class. And it's a new chart that none of you have seen yet, Astika and Nastika. Now that's what's on these 2 pillars. Astika really pretty means traditional, and Nastika means non-traditional. And in India, there's no rub against either of them. Astika, if it's orthodox, means it's taking the Vedas as its authority. Vedas and Upanishads. Sorry, Mother, we'll have to come back to you. Vedas and Upanishads are its authority. But if it's Nastika, then it doesn't necessarily take Vedas and Upanishads for its authority. It doesn't mean that it doesn't believe in them. The Vedas and Upanishads are renowned over all of India. Everyone admires them, follows them. It just means that at the particular time Buddha was living, about 550 years BC, the Vedas were not in a very good state of transmission. They weren't being taught. They had become, the teachers around them, teachings around them had become crystallized. So he came up with the 4 Noble Truths. He came up with Praticca Samutpata. He came up with the 12 Nidanas that connect you back to your past lifetimes. Those are all Vedantic. It's not like he was coming up with anything new. They were just his particular formation at that time, just like this was Patanjali's formation at the time of yoga that we looked at, the different samadhis. So Astika and Nastika. Astika is all the traditional or orthodox systems. Here's a quote. Basically, everyone has borrowed from Mother India throughout long phases of time, as there has been an endless sweep of religions, philosophies, and pathways emanating from her. In other words, not just one sacred book and a single prophet or avatar, but many, many of each. And within this plethora of spiritual avenues, there has always been room for those who profess the existence of divine reality, as well as for those who do not care to either admit it or emphasize it. So we just looked into the samadhis of yoga, right? The first half of the class and part of this half, didn't we? Did he mention God ever? Yoga mentioned Chit Shakti once or twice, infers the existence of God, but Patanjali really was leaving it up to you. In fact, the statement about yoga is that anyone can enter into it, whether they're believers or non-believers. They will just do the yoga, and then they will come upon their own conception of what reality is. Call it God or call it something else. Call it by any name you wish, or don't call it by a name at all. You know the famous disciple-teacher conversation that was had with Lord Buddha when one of his disciples came up and said, "So you've been talking all about these truths of India. Is there a God then?" And Buddha said, "Did I say there was a God?" And then the student asked, "Well, then there is no God?" And Buddha said, "Did I say there was no God?" Totally non-committal. And that's the point around Astika and Nastika that I'm making, somewhat emphasizing here, is that they're neither antagonistic of each other, nor are they trying to outdo each other. They're complementary of each other, and they're happening at different stages of the game of time, a game of time, in kalpas, in yugas, and so forth. And not only that, some of them profess belief or faith in a divine reality, and some of them don't. They just don't mention it. They're just there to hand you out the Dharmic teachings, to show you what India has been up to ever since the earliest souls were born there. Always coming from the station of nonviolence. Now there you see Astika on one side and Astika on the other. Astika admit the existence of God, basically, but notice I have an asterisk around Samkhya, because he was another one. He gave us the 24 cosmic principles. He gave us the complacencies, and he gave us the various systems of Samkhya Yoga that were followed by almost every other philosophy that came after. Everyone borrowed from Lord Kapila. But I put an asterisk there because you really can't find any mention of God in the Tattva Samasa Sutras and others, few sutras that are still left that are attributed to his authorship. There are very few Samkhya scriptures left. They're gone. Too bad. So, but those that are there, no. It's just pretty much statement of fact, reading of the cosmological order of things in the universe. Why do you think everyone went to town on it? You see, everything we just studied from yoga was borrowed from Lord Kapila's 24 cosmic principles. How could you meditate on air, earth, fire, water, and ether, tasting, hearing, touching, smelling, and seeing, the 5 subtle senses and the 5 tanmatras, 20 in all, if Kapila hadn't have come along and compiled them for you centuries earlier? You see, where would your system be then? So everyone borrowed from that great man's homework. He was the first one that stood up and said, here's what your universe consists of: outer, inner, and causal. 3 worlds, and basically those 24 components. Shaivism got so, Kashmiri Shaivism got so inspired by that they added another 12 on top finally. So then they had 36 cosmic principles. And those are all beautiful study. But could they have done that without this foundation that Kapila laid for everyone to come? So you go to India and say, Kapila. 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 If they even hear a whisper of the great man's word, there's a salute, you know, because everyone knows he handed out this early, very, very early system of divine cosmology. So I'm just jumping to him because I put an asterisk there because he's under the Astika systems, but you don't hear him mentioning God, existence of God. So there you see they're called the Shat Darshanas, the 6 darshanas of India. They're famous. You probably haven't heard of 3 of them, but the other 3 are still around, especially 2 of them. Of course, Yoga of Patanjali, which we just looked at, that's one of them. And Samkhya of Kapila, which I just mentioned. If you're into Indian philosophy, if you haven't heard specifically of Lord Kapila and Samkhya philosophy, doesn't matter, you're studying it all the time. When you look at Buddhism, Vedanta, Yoga, and other darshanas, it's there. There's a lot of the makeup is there. Then there's the Purva Mimamsa of Jaimini. That's the great man who authored that system. Then Uttara Mimamsa of Vedavyas. What's that? The classical name for Vedanta. So Uttara Mimamsa, and there's Vedavyas, whose quote we just read on that last chart. Then Nyaya of Gautama. Nyaya. See, they thumb their nose at everyone. A lot of these proofs of existence have been given to us by Nyaya and by Vaisheshika of Kannada. The Vaisheshika system is very profound, and there's still elements of both Nyaya and Vaisheshika in many of these, in the Vedantas still. It's like 2 or 3 of these philosophies took from the other 3 and borrowed the best parts of them and kept them going extant throughout the whole warp of time. So, like I said, 3 of these you probably have heard of: Samkhya, Vedanta, and Yoga. The other 3, maybe not, have heard of them. But those are the 6 orthodox systems of India that go back thousands of years BC. Some of them, the earliest ones. Now, if you look at Nastika, non-orthodox system means non-committal as to the existence of God. I for a word to explain it, and I thought, not disbelievers or non-believers, because that wouldn't quite cut it. That's why we have the difference between agnostics and atheists. So that, one doesn't believe and one hasn't decided yet. So in the same way here, you have this idea of non-committal as to the existence of God. They don't say one way or the other. My feeling is that they all believe in God, but they just don't want to give it a name. And you can see that, what to speak of 6 orthodox systems, you can also see it in the 6 or 7 main religions of the world. Judaism didn't care to put a name on it. Muslim religion didn't care to put a name on it. India ran to put as many names on as it possibly could. But wanted you to know that those were all relative, saguna, and there's one nirguna. So no matter what path you take, see, you'll find that well, I think Ramakrishna put it best in this day and age. God is with form, God is beyond form, and God is beyond both form and formlessness as well. I think that pretty much covers it right there. That you cannot conceive of Brahman, is the word that Vedanta uses, or Satchidananda if you prefer. You can't conceive of it, but there it is. You can't deny conceptualism either. You can't deny concept happening from Lord Brahma all the way down to Lord Vishnu and passing on to Lord Shiva. You see the Trinity right there. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. That's where all conceptualism really begins at the cosmic level, in these 3 great minds. Now, looking at Nastika, these 2 you would probably put in there: Buddhism of Lord Buddha and Jainism of the Tirthankaras and Mahavir. Mahavir was the most recent Tirthankara, and he was, before Christ. So Jainism really claims a very ancient heritage. If you have 24 Tirthankaras born before Christ, then it must stretch back for a lot of generations, Jainism, way back into India's ancient past. So I'll have a chart on the non-violence of Jainism that I'll show you maybe next week. I was going to bring it and put it up, but we don't have time. So you'll look at the most non-violent religion in the world, Jainism, the most sensitive and careful You know, sometimes you see them masks over their face. They don't even want to kill an insect or anything. So Buddhism, yes, quite nonviolent, but Jainism, extremely so, as some people would say. But when you look at the teachings that I've actually learned from Swami Brahmeshananda of India, who has written and studied Jainism, he's a Ramakrishna order Swami, he has this long study and about 16, 17, 18 different articles. I'm putting them in each issue of the journal as we go along. You'll find some very beautiful teachings on Jainism, why it's not just an extreme nonviolence, but there's a whole set of rules and regulations you follow that really just cut down your karma. It's not so much a moral, thou shalt not kill, or not commit violence, but there's a lot more to it than that. So it's not wise, of course, to judge something just from the outside. So I'll bring that chart along and you can see it soon. Now, we should look at the scriptures by classification in a sort of order. Oh, the reason I put this up, by the way, was when we get to Vedanta, this darshana, Uttaramimamsa, of Vedavyas, Vedanta means, you know, Veda Anta, right? Vedas, 4 of them. Anta, the end of the 4 Vedas. That doesn't mean let's get rid of the 4 Vedas. It means the Upanishads are at the end. So Vedanta really means the end of the Vedas, which is the Upanishads, and here's what's left of the Upanishads after the passage of time. There must have been maybe hundreds and thousands of them. I'd sure like to see them. What a treasure trove that would be if you could somehow bring them back. But it's eternal, right? So they're always there. They've gone back to unmanifested Prakriti. And they'll come forth again at some time in the mind of some great seer. So the 108 Upanishads is there. There you see the 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. And there you see the Upanishads that fall into each of those 4 Vedas, this one having 2 subdivisions. So you can look there and find these 108 Upanishads, which are the Vedanta. This is the, and we know because we have them here for you to read, that they're beautiful, beautiful testaments. Some of them you could read in 10 minutes. It's not like you have to break your mind, broke the mouth, as they say in Hawaii. Don't break the mind on the Upanishads. Some of them are very easy reads, like the Mandukya Upanishad, 12 slokas all on the word. Beautiful, trimmed down, if you want to know about the word. Om. But there you see also underlined the 10 or 11 of them that Shankara commented on at 700 AD. So they're the more accepted ones as far as being major Upanishads. Those 10 or 11, he actually sat down, read, commented on them, and those commentaries are famous. Just like his teacher's teacher commented on Mandukya Upanishad, became the most famous philosophical treatise in existence. Both Easterners and Westerners lauded it. It's all about non-duality, Advaita. So usually it attends the end of the Mandukya Upanishad. So you get 12 slokas there and you think, oh, I'm done. But then you get Gaudapada's commentary at the end. I'm not done. And I'm glad I'm not done. This is beautiful. And he gives you 3 or 4 prakarnas, sections on the commentary on all those 12 slokas. It's like philosophical poetry. It's perfection. We sometimes go into retreat with it. In fact, we are going into retreat with it next year in spring, if you'd like to absorb Gaudapada's Karika with us. I want to read, because we're coming to an end, so at least we've done orthodox and non-orthodox systems, so you can see what we talk about when we talk about India's darshanas. Darshana means clear seeing, a way of clear seeing. So darshana is a way that opens up the human mind to its spiritual potential. And so we will take that deeper next week. But for now, let me close with that quote at the top of that by Vivekananda. It says, Sober-minded people have become disgusted with their superstitious religions and are looking to India for new light. How eagerly they take in any little bit of the grand thoughts of the holy Vedas, which resist and are unharmed by the terrible onslaughts of modern science. The theories of creation out of nothing, a created soul, and a big tyrant of a god sitting on a throne in a place called heaven, and of eternal hellfires have disgusted the educated, and the noble thoughts of the Vedas about the eternity of creation and the soul, they are imbibing fast in one shape or another. And of course the most definitive shape of that is Advaita. That's non-duality. That pretty much is covering all of these. There's an Advaitic thread running through all of these darshanas. And that's what we're sort of getting at in this series of classes. Please join us next week and the following week and the following week for 3 more classes of Advaita Vedanta. No, 2 more Sundays of Advaita Vedanta sadhana. Shakta Advaita Vedanta sadhana. And then a break around Christmas, and then another set of classes on the rest of this chart that we will get to, which has all the cosmology to it. We're sort of taking her from the crown of her head on down to 7 chakras. And if you're talking about the kundalini of all kundalinis, that's a very profound thing to do. So please join us, be with us for that process, or watch it live stream, or look back on it if you can't make the classes. They will be stored and turned into series on YouTube that we're doing. And you can also write in your questions direct to SRV and its spiritual director, yours truly, and come to our retreats and so forth. And to learn more about these, that's why we're here, to educate and this is one of our bylaws as a non-profit organization, to educate especially the Western people in the philosophical profundity of India's great systems. Vedanta, Yoga, Samkhya, Buddhism, so forth and so on. So please join us for that again and again. Dip your mind over and over again in that ocean of teachings until it becomes completely saturated with them, and all your problems and sufferings and karmas will be disintegrated. So let's end here with the chant. Om Sato, Om Sato Ma Satgamoya, Damaso Ma Joitir Gamoya, Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamoya, Abira Abira Mayeti, Rudrayate Dakshinamukam, Te Namam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with your sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.
Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini Ramyaka Pardini Shaya Sute. Shahita Mahahava Mala Matalika Jilika Bilika Varga Vrite Virachita Valika Palika Malika Jilika Bilika Varga Vrite Sita Krita Fula Samula Sitarula Tala Japala Vashala Tute Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini Ramyaka Pardini Shaya Sute. Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini Ramyaka Pardini Shaya Sute.